You meet, you hook up, you say, hey, I like you like me, let's get married. Then you buy a house, then you start making babies.
Like, listen, if you're gonna prioritize where funds go, a wedding or towards a house, one is more equitable than the other.
What happens when two unmarried people decide to buy a house?
What's your opinion? What do you think about unmarried partners purchasing together?
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of MillenniUp, and we are talking about unmarried couples buying homes. And this is something that has largely trended over the last 10 to 15 years. Young people are doing things out of order. Typically, the box checking that would take place among young people would be: you meet, you court, you marry.
We court. How
you
far back are you going?
I'm going way back. I'm going way back. Okay, so you meet, you go steady, then you get married.
You meet, you date, you get married, you buy a house, you have children.
Damn it, Anuski, you're messing with my flow. All right. You meet, you hook up. Now
we're in modern day.
All right.
So anyway.
You meet, you hook up, you say, hey, I like you like me, let's get married. Then you buy a house, then you start making babies. That is large. That conventional lineage of life events has largely gone
mostly
not out the window, but people are kind of mixing and matching depending on certain situations. Some people are skipping the marriage route. Some people are
skipping the kids route because they can't even afford them,
They can't, exactly. So there's all these types of things that people are doing out of order. So in our world of home purchasing and home selling and blending homes and all that stuff, what happens when two unmarried people decide to buy a house or decide to both move into a house?
And I understand the thought process behind it, considering, to be able to live on a single income is getting very difficult, and logistics behind a wedding. Like, listen, if you're going to prioritize where funds go, a wedding or towards a house, one is more equitable than the other. So I can understand wanting to jump into buying a house before jumping into getting married. But then again, I may also say, do you really need to spend all that money on a wedding? But to each his own, some people want to, and that's great. But what's your opinion? What do you think about unmarried partners purchasing together?
I think if there is, I think it has to do with the longevity of the relationship, of course. I think also it's kind of the mindset. Like, there are a lot of young couples who are, for all intents and purposes, mentally in that marriage spot. They just haven't actually done the thing of going down to the courthouse and doing it, or they don't have the money to do a big wedding, or they've got a big wedding plan, but it's going to be way down there. It's a destination wedding. It's in 2 months or 2 years.
Oh, that's so far down the road.
and their parents are paying for it or something along those lines. There's a lot of mixing and matching, but I would say the biggest thing for me, and I have no opinion on this and who's ready and who's not and who should buy a house based on their if you want to buy a house, then let's do it. But in the end, I think it's really the longevity and the kind of the lineage of the relationship in general. Because other than that, obviously you're dating for 2 months and you do decide to buy a house together. I think that's can be kind of reckless because you don't know, especially if you don't already live together. I think definitely a big part of it is if you've already lived together and then you're buying a house. I think it's different than you guys aren't living together at all, and then you guys decide to go buy one.
Me personally, I'm of the mind of not my business. Do what you do. You know more than anybody else does, but make an informed decision and know what the risks are. There may be decisions that I may not make, but that kind of goes with a lot of things in life. But if you are going to do it, then you're going to do it. But so long as you have all of the information of what can happen, and consider it beforehand, just do that is what I ask. A lot of people don't understand. So, and we'll get into this, some of the things I can kick it off, but just by saying, um, like I've had somebody who, either one person can be on the mortgage or both people can be on the mortgage, but then both people want to be on the deed. So what happens then? So am I a worst case scenario thinker? I wouldn't say okay, I'd say a little bit, yeah. I like to think of what is the worst thing that could happen because, leave it to me that it'll actually happen. And then what? So let's say you are with somebody, you're not married. So there's one less thing to have to worry about, but you own a house together. So if you're both on that deed, you can't sell it without the other one signing off on it. And then who gets the profits from it? And then how is that split? So you might not be married, both of you are on it. And then who gets what? How has that been predetermined? Has that even been a conversation you guys have had? And then is it in writing? Is it legally binding? And that stuff, that's a lot. It's a lot of your money and your investments. Did one person put in more to the house than the other? I've seen, and this will be probably another topic at some point anyway, as far as even like married couples buying houses and what happens during a divorce. And, what if somebody put in more than the other? But, if there isn't that, then, you have to figure out what's going to happen in that case. Nobody wants to talk about the fact that you might split, but life happens and you might. So then what? Are you going to be stuck with this house because one person doesn't want to leave? Who leaves? So there's those things to consider. And then it's who does go on the mortgage. Is it going to be both of you? Is it going to be one of you? Is it going to be is one person going to hurt the file by being on it? And so then they're not on the mortgage, but then they are on the deed. So then you're at a financial risk and you're carrying the financial responsibility for it.
Yep.
And so then when it comes time that you have to come make a decision, the other person may just say well, screw this, but you can't because you're the one that actually has to figure out the loan, but then you can't sell it because they're both on it. The other one person's making it difficult. So there's a lot of things to consider.
My head is spinning.
It's a lot of things. And all of these scenarios I just said are all things that I have seen and within the past 2 years alone. Yeah. So, and it's not always all bad, but like you said, make sure that you have to be strong in your relationship. I know that we have a lender who feels very strongly one way about unmarried couples purchasing homes together because he's also seen a thing or two.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always work out as clean and favorably, but sometimes it will. And nobody knows that better than you and who you're with. But there are discussions that need to be had and hard ones because not all sunshine and rainbows.
So, all right. So let's.
I will get off of. Thank you. Thank you for attending my TED Talk.
That's all right. And like clockwork, I'm going to say it. You know what I'm going to say? Let's eat the elephant one bite at a time here.
Okay.
All right. We got some
let's
things. Let's
break that down.
Let's break that down. Let's systematize this and get some consensus here. So yes, to answer your question, there is a document that you can sign as an unmarried couple that would lay out the mechanisms of a dispossession or a sale in the event that the relationship one party wants out. It is very similar. I don't want to say not legally or the way it looks, but it's kind of like a prenup for the property itself. Prenup usually covers the entire, the scope of your life, the kids, the assets, everything like that. But in this, you can have an attorney draw up an agreement. It's basically like a property agreement between two unmarried couples. When you're married, it falls under the legal bounds of your marriage certificate. So it's a totally different thing. You take title a different way. In the case of two unmarried couples, you get usually it'll be what's called joint tenancy, which is basically you buy the house. If one person dies, the other side, the other party gets the house. But generally what you're doing when you're buying a house unmarried without the legal protections of marriage and that certificate is you're entering really a business relationship. And I know it sounds really kind of
transactional,
shitty and unromantic. But in the end, that's what you're doing. You have two legally independent parties purchasing an asset who want equal rights to it. And it's kind of the same thing as forming a company. If you chose a business partner, if you and I formed a business, we would draw up docs to say, hey, we're never rooting for never rooting for this to happen, but it does. And we have somebody right now that we both know who, they're, in love, and then they bought a house, and they now are not in love, and they've got a house that they're trying to rent because they can't decide on what to do with it or sell it or whatever. So there's a lot of complications that come with it. Conversely, though, I don't know how many people in the last year I've helped who are not married. They're planning on eventually getting married, and they've taken the house, and a couple of them have taken my advice to like have something drawn up. It's a hard conversation to have, but it's a smart one.
And I've thought about that too, because it's like I've thought about prenups, and I can imagine that like if you even bring up that word when deciding to get married, somebody's the other partner's knee-jerk reaction would be, what, you don't trust that we're going to make it? It's not a matter of trusting if, you can still be very invested in the relationship and feel so wholeheartedly it's going to like go over great. But like, it's like buying a house without homeowners insurance. Why not just have it for an incidental, like so that you are protected regardless? It doesn't make you any less careful. It doesn't make anything like any less important to you, but it's an assurance to be able to have there to protect everybody.
Yeah.
It's
the same thing. It's just a hard conversation for people to have. And also, like I said, I think there's a lot of people don't even realize that can happen. Like you can draw up a document that shows like what actually happens. And yeah, with younger couples, it's definitely a thing where one person is financially responsible and the other one isn't, because frankly, that one person doesn't have the credit, or doesn't, they don't have the income, and they actually hurt the file, or they knock them out of a loan product. I've had that happen.
Now, there's a flip side too, though, not to cut you off, where, say the person who's not in the mortgage but is on the deed, let's say over the course of 5 years or however many years it's been that they have also been living in that house, that they may not be on the mortgage, but have been putting in their fair share of money towards the mortgage, like has paid half the mortgage every single month of that 5 years, and has put in their own money into, whether it's furnishing it, the repairs, the homeowner's insurance, like everything that goes along to it. And then the other party wants to like go to sell it, but no, you've covered those bills and you've covered those mortgage payments. So shouldn't you be entitled to something?
Mm-hmm. Yes, you should. And that's why you would want to draw up a document to disclose, to say like, listen, we're both going to be paying it. Both parties agree to pay half of the rent. And in the event of, us falling out of love and selling the house, then that, the proceeds would go, equally. Or, hey, I'm going to cover all the mortgage, and he's just tagging along. Like when it comes to it, like he's just happy to be here. I get all the proceeds, and he's just living rent free. Like that's it. And you have to delineate that. And every relationship kind of comes with its own kind of in its own shape and size. But, it's never ideal, but someone has thought of this, and lawyers deal with this all the time. I deal, unfortunately, with a lot of divorce situations, and it's not even straightforward there. And you have like an entire prenup or a legal separation, and then you got to wait the 12 months. Like there's all these mechanisms, and you got the courts, and you got.
And not to mention, every state has different laws regarding that too. Some people, like I know Tennessee is a very, very 50-50 state. And I know this isn't about married couples, but I mean, as far as like splitting assets, a very 50-50. I mean, these are all the things that people are not, it's really, and we want to keep this like a fun and like positive experience for people, but it needs to kind of be a realistic one too. And think of all the things that can happen down the line, and what are the state laws, and what are your actual rights when going into this.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we've got a whole group, just like we have insurance and lenders, where we have a whole group of lawyers who do this all day, every day, family attorneys. And that, when you decide to get married, you roll the house into a prenup if you want to get a prenup. A lot of people don't realize too, there's what's called postnup. Like you get married and you're like, you didn't want to like ruin the day by saying, hey, honey, we need a prenup. But then you want to go and do a postnup, like that can happen.
And I will say, do those things when things are amicable and you are happy and you are in love and you are at the peak of caring about each other's well-being, because I'll tell you what, by the time something happens where you are having to split those assets, I don't think it's always going to feel that way where you want to take
Yeah,
care of the other person.
that's right. So I think that in the net, in the aggregate, I think that it's totally like an okay thing to buy a house. I'm going to just say
Mhm.
it. I think it's totally okay to buy a house when you're unmarried. The
And I think that
It's just
like
not protecting yourself.
it's like
It's not protecting yourself or thinking through those iterations that need to be thought of. That's when you can kind of get into a jam, because people are mixing and matching. They're not getting married, or they're having a kid, and then they're buying the upsizing, and then they decide to get married. Like it's all kind of a free for all at this point.
it's harder logistically now too to be able to follow the same cadence that even like our parents were doing 20, 30 years ago. I mean, people having to buy unmarried
Uh oh.
is
We got a Jen Anuski soapbox moment.
I will refrain from going too far into it, being too soapboxy and preachy about it. But I mean, it was just the way things were done back there because they could be done. That like the household incomes like could afford to do that. Where like even if it was just your stereotypical like, oh, husband goes to work, makes the bills, wife stays at home, blah, blah, blah. That's not the case anymore because like just cost of living in general and the cost to be able to even pay a mortgage or even rents, like it a lot of times it's taking two people to have to carry that payment. So for two people to
Yeah.
move in to be like that aren't married, as long as you can like tolerate each other and you already know you can live together and you have a strong
I
relationship.
think so. A couple things. First of all, you're totally skipping over the financial or the social pressure that people used to have to endure, where you couldn't get pregnant before you got married, and there was a certain like
Well,
parents and
set me
family
on
were,
fire walking into a church.
yeah. No, but in the end, like in the end, like there was a lot of pressure. Like you couldn't do certain things before because of all the social peer pressure. Um, and that came down to religion, and I mean, obviously, like in certain areas of the country there's different customs and all that good stuff, but generally, and at least where we are in the Northeast, it was definitely frowned upon to have a baby before you bought a house. But now it's kind of like, hey,
I will say, if at all possible, I would still recommend getting a house before you have a baby because, and I've said this in some other podcast, boy, the costs that come along with children are so unexpected and you can even budget
mhm,
for it and it is still going to be more than you think. And I mean, I'm speaking just from personal experience. Everybody's situations and financial situations are different. But I mean, I can at least say from my own experience, if I did not get a house before I had Jackson, I don't know if I ever would have been able to. It's so much. If you can, house first, then get baby. Just logistically, not even social pressures. Do it while you have the money before it all goes to childcare and diapers and formula and experiences
yeah,
and just a plethora of things that go into children.
sure, yeah, and but like I said, I think that it's totally fine as long as you have a plan and you guys protect yourself legally.
Yep.
We don't frown upon any of that at all, and in fact, it's fairly common. The other thing we also get, and maybe someone listening to this would find this relatable, they start looking for a house and they're getting married. Like right now, if somebody's getting married in September, but they're going to start looking for a house because right after the wedding, they're going to be flush with cash. If they have one of these big weddings, they're going to have tens of thousands of dollars
One of
to
our
buy a house.
first
So
episodes, we brought up that point back when we were still just
yeah, like weddings are like big. Like if your parents are paying, people's parents still pay for weddings. And if you're pulling 25, 30 grand out of it from gifts, and being smart about your registry, your wedding registry and all that.
Oh,
Um,
I always tell people if anytime I find out somebody got engaged or like I'm talking to somebody who's like getting married, I suggest to them all the time, like if you guys like, 'cause a lot of times people who are getting married had already been living together and renting together. They already have everything for their house or like for where they live regarding just like your standard wedding registry gifts of like kitchen towels and pots and pans and like people at this point already have that stuff together. Why not ask for a fund for a down payment?
that's largely what the custom has been for decades, is that the community rallies around a couple and funds the next steps of their life. And
Now
like
that's also
there's
something to
some
talk to a lender about as far as like how much you're going to be allowed in gift monies. Because if you just plan to have like all of your money for closing and all of your down money and every like penny that you need to buy the house from gifts, just confirm with your lender that whatever loan program you're doing or whatever kind of loan you're getting allows for that. So again, this
Yeah.
goes back to the conversations that need to be had before you actually like go out and start Zillow surfing and going into houses and all that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that the wedding, what we call the wedding industrial complex, is not going anywhere, but it is very much under assault because it is expensive to get. What?
It's so expensive. Like,
It is.
oh
It can
my
be.
God. I mean, I was just like, side note, I'm on Facebook. I'm in this like really awesome Philippines Facebook group, phenomenal community of women. And like somebody who represents this like bridal something, whatever's weddings at some venue was like, we have an awesome and amazing deal coming up for the fall or whatever. And for the venue, it's only $17,000 for buffet style and for a venue like for a Friday, and then $25,000 for a Saturday wedding,
cheap.
and $20,000 for a Sunday. And it's like, it is cheap, but it's wild to think that is cheap. And you know all about like wedding venues. You own one.
Yeah.
It's just like the fact that it can vary in like thousands of dollars just because of the day of the week. I get it, but it's like, but only because you can? That's so messed up.
Dude, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. You got photographers, you got the band, you got the DJ, you got
I know.
The centerpieces, you got the flowers, you got the if you're not getting married,
just for a buffet style, not even just like to sit down. They were all open bar, but like,
but it's a special day, Jen. It's a very special day.
And there was a time in my life where I had the whole Pinterest board set up, where I had like what my wedding was going to be like. At this rate, who knows if there even is going to ever be one. But if like hell freezes over and there is a wedding in my own future, I'll tell you what, that is going to be so minimal because of how much I could do with that money. Oh my Lord.
Keep in mind, the less people you invite, the less, because that's the other thing.
I'll do destination because I know a lot of people in my life aren't going to want to pay to go down there, and I'm not going to pay for them to go down. So wherever.
Well, no, but if you have less guests, the less money,
exactly.
Less gifts you get. So, in the end, it's the wedding industrial complex is not going anywhere, but it is under assault, and it definitely swings too with the economy. So people feel really good about money. They go, honey, get the top shelf bar, get the candy bar, get the chair dressing.
And so long as people are still,
what are those things you hang over the back of the chair?
Not my specialty. I don't know.
Okay.
I know what you're talking about, but like,
you're ahead of me.
I stopped that Pinterest board. I got to blow the dust off of that one.
It's deleted.
I mean, but the thing is, so long as people are still buying it, it's still going to keep happening. I mean, it might be under fire, but it's still going. But all to say that if two unmarried people are going to decide to purchase a house together, just do your due diligence, just do your research, just talk to people who can help you, talk to your lender, talk to an attorney, talk to your agent first, and we will guide you to who you need to talk to. But
that's right.
We are not discouraging it. Just do your research.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. I think we can leave it at that. But yeah, I think that's a great piece of advice. It's like, if you have any thinking of doing anything when you're not married, we can usually get you in touch with the people who can talk to you about the pros and cons.
Yep. Alrighty.
All right, guys.
Till next time. Bye.